Hey, and welcome to the first real episode of Video Game Autopsy. I just kind of want to get this out of the way because I know I've done one of these already, but this is still kind of a new show. So, basic rundown is I look at games that, basically what I do is I look at games that had some sort of impact because of their development. So, very disappointing, pulled a rabbit out of the hat, that sort of thing. Mostly failures. Those are more fun and easier to do anyways. So I guess we'll see where it goes. I don't really have a set release schedule, but I'm gonna just kind of do these whenever I have time. I mean, I still work full time and can't really monetize these anymore, so whatever. We'll just see where it goes. Thanks. In the year 2014, the new console era was still in its infancy. Something that really stuck out to me is how far this generation has actually come in such a short time frame. The in-between period of cross-generation games reveals a lot of game design growing pains that both the Xbox and PlayStation have gone through. One of these games is Watch Dogs. I still remember how blown away I was when I saw this at E3 for the first time. I hadn't even heard of it until 2013 when I saw it alongside all the other hopefuls trying to jump into the new generation. Other games that come to mind from that time are Titanfall, Destiny, Battlefield 4, and The Order 1886. Yeah, I'll get to that one. Now, something these games all have in common with Watch Dogs is they had disappointing launches. Now, to be fair, they didn't all crash and burn. Destiny and Battlefield 4 both managed to crawl their way out, and Titanfall and Watch Dogs both got excellent sequels, but the sting of being burned on launch never truly goes away. Some people swear off a game and its sequels for good. I personally know people who never touched Destiny again despite all the updates and DLC. With the exception of Titanfall, I can still remember the sour taste these games left in my mouth, but one that never went away was Watch Dogs. I bought into this game so hard that I actually filed a Steam support ticket to cancel my pre-order so I can get the deluxe edition instead. I had that stupid hat that Aiden wore in the game, and I dressed up as the guy for Comic-Con. I remember I was all excited because I just built my new PC with a bunch of new parts, and I was bragging about how I was going to play it at 1600p maxed out, and I was acting like it was just the pinnacle of graphics technology. And how, oh, it's only 900p and 792p on the PS4 and Xbox One. God, do you remember how normal that was? Oh yeah, and this was the time when the biggest controversy that was in video games was when the creative director for Watch Dogs said, resolution's just a number, just like frame rate's a number. All those numbers are valid aspects of making games. Like, oh Jesus, I just remember being incredulous about that. Well, simpler times. After delays to improve the game, it finally released in late May to some mixed reviews, loads of salty players, complaints about the PC version running badly or even not at all, graphical elements like reflections being fake, very limited hacking abilities, a story that's almost as boring as its protagonist. And this is without even mentioning the infamous downgrade from the E3 version. Now, my personal experience was less horrible, at least it was at first. I had already preloaded it onto my computer and I was basically counting the minutes. I ended up blowing off previous plans just so I can get there right at 9 PM when the digital version went live. I spent a few moments cranking up the options and fiddling with the settings, and I went on in. I was desperate to absorb everything I saw, everything I heard, every scene, every first moment. I deliberately burned it into my memory because I knew this was the next big thing. You know what I remember? Long loading screen, very uninspired writing, and this just nagging, quiet voice in the back of my head telling me something was wrong, something was off. Now, I've learned over the years that that quiet voice was standing in for having the ability to look at something critically and understand why something is good or something is bad. But I didn't know to listen to my own cynicism, and this may be part of the reason I forced myself to play it for 25 hours, because I got bored of it very quickly. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, 2014 was still young in the life of the consoles. I also mentioned that the game ran at very underwhelming resolutions, especially when you consider that Watch Dogs 2, which looks much better, runs at 1080p and 900p on the PlayStation and Xbox respectively. According to a Destructoid article dated in November 16th, 2011, which, just for reference, is about 5 days after Skyrim came out, Ubisoft Montreal are using target boxes created with the next Xbox's spec in mind. This was the year before the game was first revealed. Now, there isn't an exact date that they got the dev kits, assuming the report is even accurate at the time. This gives them about 3 years until they had released the game to port the previous 2 years of work to the new hardware, which is an entirely new architecture. Now, I don't know how comparable the final product was to the dev kits they were using, but I do have a couple of educated guesses. Something that some of the games I mentioned earlier, as well as many others at this point, suffered from is things like very sub-native resolutions and bad performance, especially in the case of the weaker GPU on the Xbox One. A few quick examples with Xbox first, PS4 second are Battlefield 4 running at 720p and 900p, Titanfall running at 792p, The Order 1886 technically was 1080p, but it was a weird aspect ratio and they cheated a lot, so... I know I'm cherry picking a little bit, but I want to point out how these numbers compare to what comes out now, because all these games are from the early life of the new consoles. Some modern releases are Titanfall 2 at 900p and 1080p, Doom is at 1080p on both, roughly, and The Division's at 1080p on both, again, roughly. You get the idea. Aside from resolution and frame rate changes, these games look a lot better. I'm talking about better textures, better lighting, better shadows, better effects, better animations, and better almost everything. I mean, come on, look at this. Look at that. Look how good that is. Gee, Michael, we get it. Games get better over time. Is there any point to any of this? Yes. Yes, there is. See, this goes hand in hand with a lot of those games being meant for a previous generation at some point. And in the race to be the first to offer the true next-gen experience, we got a lot of stuff that was half-baked. Did you notice that some of the early games this generation lacked a good story, or even a story at all in some cases? See, these games are being made for a different generation of hardware entirely, so when you have to refocus development so you can make something that represents the new shiny hardware everyone's trying to justify buying, you have to start making sacrifices. Oh, you need to rework the lighting engine to look next gen? Sorry, Johnny, we can't fix the train tracks not making sense in the 80 mile per hour 90-degree hairpin turns anymore. Oh, you want to implement some always online features with drop-in drop-out dynamic multiplayer? Oh, I don't think we have the time or money to make Aiden a better character anymore. What's that? You want to put in proper reflections instead of these ugly placeholders we've been using? Oh, sorry, we're launching the game in 2 months and we used all the processing and memory budget on that sweet new lighting engine. Wait, you're saying that wasn't an important thing to spend development time and resources on? Oh. Shit. Oh, and don't forget, they were still making this game for last gen and the Wii U, both of which are enormously underpowered next to the new hardware, and with very different architecture. One of the developers for Destiny expressed frustration at the fact that every time they change a skin for a gun, they would have to recompile and bug test all 4 different versions of the game, which is likely why there was never a PC version until the sequel. In the case of Watch Dogs, we're looking at 6 versions of the game. This may have led to the graphical downgrade, which likely happened during the game's delay. So it really all comes down to a lack of development time. Well, I'm sure they had the resources to continue development. I mean, after all, they had a budget of $68 million. They clearly made the decision along the way to cut corners and try to hit an early generation launch window. From a business perspective, this did work, as they hit their highest pre-order numbers for a new IP from Ubisoft. Fortunately, they actually seem to have taken this lesson and learned from it. When Watch Dogs 2 was approaching release, they were concerned because of lower pre-order numbers. They had to decrease their sales projections. However, the CEO believed that people would still buy it once the reviews were out, confident that the game would sell on its own merits. Now, I couldn't find the sales numbers to compare to the first game, which sold 9 million copies, by the way. But according to Steam Spy, Watch Dogs 1 has roughly under 800,000 total players, and Watch Dogs 2 has roughly 630,000 players. And while this doesn't appear to be a commercial failure, it's very clear that the bad reputation of the first game hurt the sales for the second, even after people found out it was good. I'll be honest, I was guilty of this myself. I wasn't even going to give Watch Dogs 2 the time of day until I heard from someone I trusted that it was actually really good. So maybe that should be a warning for developers. I mean, yeah, you can put together some really good marketing and whip customers into a frenzy, but once you're branded as a bullshit artist, it's really hard to get the hardcore community back on board. People seem to have short memories, but if you mess up, they will never let you forget it.